Good morning, welcome everybody. We are going to learn, God willing, chapter 1 in Tractate Shabbos. The name of the chapter is Tractate Shabbos, and page 19. We ended off yesterday with Kuta Chabavli, with Babylonian dip. This was a dipping sauce made of sour milk, moldy bread crusts, and salt. This was the Kuta Chabavli. And now, since it was used as a dip rather than eaten by itself, it takes long time for it to be used up. Like any dip versus actual food that is being consumed, the dip is just like the people who eat margarine, butter, they last longer than someone who just eat the piece of bread. So Kuta Chabavli, v'chol mini kuta, and all types of dips, but they have to constitute leaven, chametz. Also, limkor shloishim yom kodem Pesach. You're not allowed to sell it 30 days before Pesach. At least this is the opinion of Beis Shammai. Rabbi Yehuda follows the opinion of Beis Shammai, that one must see that his chametz is destroyed, consumed before Pesach. Tanu Rabbanon, noislim mizon slifna kelev b'chotzer. We may place food before a dog in the courtyard, in which one is permitted to carry on the Shabbos. Not leviotza, if he takes it out and goes out to the yard, it goes out of the yard, and is cooking, we need not involve ourselves with it. Similarly, you're allowed to give place food before a Gentile in the courtyard on the Shabbos. Not loy. If the goy takes it and leaves, meaning he goes out of the courtyard, and is cooking loy, we need not involve ourselves with it. So we're allowed to leave it outside in the courtyard for the dog to take it, and if he leaves, it's not a problem. And similarly, if putting it out and a Gentile takes the food and he moves along, he goes out with it, goes out of the courtyard, it would not be a problem. So next, Hatu Lamali. Now, why do I need this additional case concerning the Gentile? You already told me about the dog, that I can leave the bread, I can leave the food outside. And if he carries it out of the perimeter, out of the courtyard, it's not a problem. So the Gemara says, Ainuach, it's really the same, these two cases. The obligation to feed this one, the dog, is incumbent upon him. It's your dog, you have to feed him. But the obligation to feed the Gentile is not your obligation. Kamashon, the Bible therefore informs us that we may feed the Gentile as well on Shabbos. Tanu Rabbon. You're not allowed to rent your utensils to a Gentile before Shabbos. If it's on Wednesday or Thursday, it's permissible. And similarly, says one may not send letters with a Gentile on Friday. But if you do it on Wednesday and Thursday, it's permissible, it's permitted. We're holding in 1982 on the left side. They said about Rabbi Yossi the Kohen, the priest, and some say it was Rabbi Yossi HaChosid, the pious, that his handwriting was never found in the possession of a Gentile, was never found in a possession of a Gentile. Tanu Rabbon. Ein mishalchin ge'ez b'ad nocher Shabbos, we may not send a letter with a Gentile on Friday, ela im ken koitzes lodomim, unless one stipulates a fee for him. What does it mean? It stipulates a fee for him. It says he pays in 13. The note 13 says he pays the Gentile a set fee for the complete job, rather for the time spent on it. So it's just pay him a fee, like we put a stamp. That's the fee for sending the letter. You're not paying him if he traveled a little longer, or he spent more time, or more effort was involved in delivering your package. It was a set fee. Beis Shammai say, there must be sufficient time for the Gentile to go from your house, the place of picking up the package or the ladder, to his house. The opinion of Beis Hillel, that he actually has to make it to a house that is close to the city wall, the closest house to the wall of your city. The Gemara assumes that the latter part of the Baisa also refers to where a set fee was stipulated, and therefore asks V'aloi kotzatz, but has he not stipulated a fee as stated in the first part of the Baisa? Why then do Beis Hillel require that there be sufficient time for the Gentile to make it to the nearest to the house nearest the wall of the city? You already gave him a set fee, so really it doesn't make a difference whether he makes it to the house closer to the wall of the city, or he makes it to deep into the city. He goes inside the city. Doesn't make a difference. You gave him a fee, set fee for his job, for the delivery, and that's it. This is what the latter part of the Bais is speaking about. If you did not stipulate the fee, meaning that you are paying the Gentile by the hour, or by his effort, by his time, in such a case, Beit Shammai said, no, he has to make it to his house. He has to take it from your house before Shabbos and make it to his house before Shabbos also. If he'll be traveling with your package on Shabbos, it would be a problem for you, even though he's a Gentile. Beis Hillel say, Beis Hillel tell us, Beis Hillel say, Ad shegiel levaisa somoch lechoimo, holding in 1983. And it is not permitted unless he can reach the house to the wall of the city before the Shabbos. But you said in the beginning of the Baita that we may not send unless a fee is stipulated, which implies that without stipulating a fee, one may not send a letter with a Gentile altogether. Even if he has the time to reach the house nearest the wall, how can you now explain the end of the Baita to mean that Beis Hillel permits sending the letter when no fee stipulated if the Gentile can reach the house nearest the wall before Shabbos? In other words, just say that if he made a stipulation, he can do it, he can make it to the wall, or he can take it. But if he did not, if there was no stipulation of a fee, then he's not allowed to do it. He's not allowed to give the package to a Gentile right before Shabbos, because he will be traveling with it on Shabbos. Your package will be traveling on Shabbos. The last part of the Bais in which Beis Hillel permit sending a letter with a Gentile without stipulating a set fee, if there is time for him to reach the house nearest the wall, refers to where the mayor's residence is fixed in the city. Mayor's residence is fixed in the city. Rashi translates door. Door usually refers to mail. Post office is door in Hebrew. But over here, Rashi translates the word door as the ruler of the city, to whom it was common to send letters. He was the governor, like the congressman. He gets most of the letters of the city. So Beis Hillel is dealing with a case where the mayor's residence is fixed in the city. So a lot of mail coming his way. And this first part of the Baisa, which rules that where no set fee is stipulated, one may not send a letter with a Gentile, refers to where the mayor's residence is not fixed in the city. Tanu Rabban, the Gemara cites a Baisa that discusses a similar law. Tanu Rabban, en mafling b'sfina, you're not allowed to travel on a boat. Pochos mishloish shayim kodem l'Shabbos. We may not embark on a journey by sheep less than 3 days before the Shabbos. So, practically speaking, if you're traveling on a boat on Sunday, would be great. Yeah. Monday it's still okay, Tuesday, but then you get to 3 days before Shabbos, it's already a question whether you can on that boat. Even though the boat will be traveling on Shabbos, but your entry to the boat has to have sufficient amount of days before Shabbos. When are these words said? The Dvar Rishus is when you're traveling on a boat is for business, for pleasure. But if you're traveling to do a mitzvah, Shapir Dami, it is proper for him to set sail even within 3 days before 3 days of the Shabbos. So, Ufoisek al menas, and he stipulates with him, with the Gentiles' ship's captain, that he is setting sail with him on condition that the Gentile refrain from sailing the ship on the Shabbos. He has to make such condition with such stipulation with the captain. And he may not. And he may then then embark on the mitzvah journey, even if the Gentile will not refrain from sailing. Meaning, he will refrain to listen to him. He will not. He will still be traveling on Shabbos.
Right.
He will not refrain from sailing the ship on Shabbos, even though he told them, I'm not going to travel on Shabbos. But he will, even if he continues, it's not your problem. You made the stipulation with the captain. You're allowed to get onto the boat, and we're dealing with Val Mitzvah, that you're going to do a mitzvah. There's a famous story about the Alter Rebbe who were on a boat, and he asked him to stop for the sanctification of the moon, and they didn't stop. Then then the boat stopped miraculously. They couldn't get it going, and the question was asked, if he could have done it, if he did it, why did he why did he even ask? Why do you ask him? So the answer, I think the Rebbe gave the answer that you have to do things according to Teva, according to nature. And generally, you have to try to conduct yourself by nature. When things don't work by nature, there's always the above nature, the super power that can be utilized, at least by the tzaddikim.
Right.
So over here, if he's not listening, he's not listening. So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, that was Divrei Rebbe. These are the words of Rebbe. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, you don't even have to make the stipulation altogether. According to Rabbi, you need to make the stipulation. If he didn't listen to you, the Gentile, it's okay. According to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, you don't even have to make the stipulation with the goy if you're traveling at Dvar Mitzvah. So even right before Shabbos, you would be allowed to travel. And to travel from a place called Tzor to a place called Sidon is permitted even on Friday. Why? It says in 28, the trip by sea from Tzor, from a place called Tzor to Sidon, could be done in a day. And people would wish to travel people would wish to travel there on Friday, which was the market day in Sidon, as mentioned in Psachim. So Bas Yosef explains that the trip can be done in a day only if the winds are favorable, because those days they didn't have the engine propelled boats. They only had the wind propelled boats. So you can make the trip in one day only if the winds are favorable. The Bible is teaching that the trip is permitted even though it is possible that the ship will not reach its destination on Shabbos, before Shabbos. So the Gemara in Psachim relates, however, that some had the custom to refrain from such Friday journeys so as to be free to prepare for the Shabbos. Tanu Rabbon, and so if we need to go to war, we may not lay siege to Gentile cities less than 3 days before the Shabbos. But if they began the siege, they do not lift it when Shabbos arrives. Shama used to say, Ad ridato, until it's conquered, means that the war be continued. Afilu b'Shabbos, even on Shabbos. Amar b'Shir Gamliel nogi noyu, or B'Shir Gamliel said the practice was in my father's household. This was the practice in my father's household. Now, Tanya Amar b'Tzadu kachem nogi shabeis Rabban Gamliel. This was a custom in the house of Rabban Gamliel. Shon noislim kli lovon lekoivus shloish yomim koidem haPesach, koidem haShabbos. They used to give white clothes to the launderer 3 days before Shabbos. Utzvim afilu be'erev Shabbos, and colored clothes even on Friday. They used to hand them to the launderer. From their words, we learn that it's harder to launder the white garments than colored ones. That's why the white ones you had to give them at least 3 days before Shabbos, and the colored ones even on Friday you were allowed to give it to the launderer. Abai was giving a certain article of colored clothing to a launderer. He had a garment that was colored. He gave it to a launderer. So how much money do you want for cleaning it, this colored garment? The same as the price for colored is the same as price for colored. Price for white is the same as colored. So the rabbis have already anticipated your pricing by teaching us that it is easier to clean colored clothing than white. The price should be lower as well. If it's easier for you to do the job, so the price is supposed to be lower. One who gives clothing to the launderer, should give it to him with measurements. And take it from him with measurements. Till today, if you go to a laundromat, some of they weigh the clothes and they give it back to you. You can ask them to weigh it back to see if there's discrepancy in the clothing. If you have 20 pounds of clothes that you give to the laundry, you're supposed to get close to 20 pounds. So the one who gives b'mishchanei should give it to him with measurements, and if they mean measurements of a weight, but uvemishchanishko minei, and take it back from him with a measurement. The itfei, for he will then know if second measurement is greater. After the launderer damaged it by stretching it too much. V'yibatzir, the second measurement is smaller. After the chatze, he damaged it by shrinking it. So the measurement really allows you to see the before and after. The Gemara quotes the Mishnah's concluding statement: "V'shovim elu ve'elu sheternim." and these, and both these and those, meaning Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, the two schools of Beis Shammai and Hillel, concur. They agree that we may place the beams of the olive press or the circular planks of the wine press on the chopped fruits Friday afternoon, even though the oil or wine will be pressed out on the Shabbos. But before Shabbos, to leave it and allow it to do its thing during Shabbos. What is the difference about all of them? All the activities mentioned earlier in the Mishnah, Beit Shammai decreed that one may not allow them to continue unaided into the Shabbos. You shouldn't do it. But in this case, suddenly Beit Shammai permits it. Why? When it comes to the wine press and the olive press, suddenly they are permitting it. What's the difference? Why? So the Gemara answers, these first activities listed in the Mishnah, or if one would personally do them, he would be liable to a chatos. Gozu Beis Shammai, meaning he would be liable to a sin offering. And so that's why Beis Shammai decreed, Gozu Beis Shammai Erev Shabbos Simcha Shecha. They decreed that Friday towards the evening, Beis Shammai decreed that one may not initiate them Friday towards evening and allow his utensils to continue on Shabbos. When it comes to the wine press and the olive press, the planks that is being used to press olives and grapes, for if one would personally do them on Shabbos, he would not be liable to a sin offering. And that's why they did not decree the work be stopped before Shabbos. We just have to understand why he wouldn't be liable. In a regular case, he would be liable, but in a sin offering, he would not be liable. It says in 39, the view of our Mishnah, if a person squeezes the juices out of chopped olives or grapes on the Shabbos, he is not guilty of a biblical melacha. The Gemara will soon explain why he is not biblically obligated or biblically guilty of doing this type of work of squeezing the olives or the grapes. My Tana the whole midid the osim melo shapir dami. Who is the Tana of our Mishnah, which has taught in the case of anything, any liquid that would come out of the fruit on its own without pressing, meaning fruit that the liquid will come out on its own without pressing, it is proper from a biblical standpoint to squeeze it out on the Shabbos. From a biblical standpoint, you'd be allowed to squeeze it because on its own, the liquids will ooze out, will come out. Rabbi Shmuel said it is authored by Rabbi Shmuel that none. We learned in a Baisa. Hashum va'boiser. Shum is garlic. Boiser is unripe grapes. Va'melilos, an unripe grain. Sheriskon b'odom, that you press them, you squeeze the juice out of them while it was still day. While it is still day on Friday. And Rabbi Shmuel says he may allow the process to finish even after dark. And Rabbi Akiva says, Lo yigmor, he may not allow the process to finish after dark. Just a disclaimer, the Gemara is mentioning different opinions, but it's not necessarily what we follow, the halacha. Halacha is the Shulchan Aruch, the book of Jewish law. We're just learning the different opinions and the reasoning behind them. And in many cases, the Shulchan Aruch took the book of Jewish law, took the majority, the opinion of the majority, and put it into the book of Jewish law. So learning the different opinions, but one should not say, "Oh, I heard in the Gemara, I learned in the Gemara, therefore this is how I conduct myself." Rabbi Lozer, so 19b1. So Rabbi Lozer says it is authored by the Tana Rabbi Lozer. That many Rabbi Lozer. So one Rabbi Lozer says that it was authored by another Rabbi Lozer. That we learned in the Brisa, if one broke up honeycomb before the Shabbos and the honey oozed by itself, the honey is coming by itself from the fragmented honeycomb on the Shabbos. Also, Rabbi Lezer Matir. It's forbidden according to the rabbis. It's prohibited. Rabbi Lezer says it's allowed. Rabbi Lezer permits. Rabbi Lezer would permit even eating the honey on that day. The rabbi says it's forbidden to eat the honey on that day because it's something that is happening on Shabbos. Having presented two opinions regarding the authorship of our Mishnah, is it Rabbi Lezer or a different rabbi? And Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina Maitam lo Mar Rabbi Lezer. What is the reasoning of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina that he did not explain as Rabbi Lezer? Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina would say to you, it is only there in a case of honey, where it is initially a food, and in the end it's still food, that the Tana Rabbi Lozer does not consider the squeezing of chopped mess to be biblically forbidden. Food in the beginning, food at the end. But in the case of olives and grapes, it starts off with being food, and then it changes to be a liquid. Take grapes, squeeze it, now it's not grape anymore. Even the bracha changes. Comes to olive, it was an olive, now it's oil. So, but here in the case of olives and grapes mentioned by our Mishnah, it is initially food and now a beverage. And we cannot extrapolate that the Tana Rabbi Lezer would issue his permit even in this case. Rabbi Lezer, but and the Amayru Rabbi Lezer, how does he counter Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina's argument? He would say to you, I heard from Rabbi Lezer that we learned about Tana Rabbi Lezer that in his view it is permitted even in the case of olives and grapes, despite the fact that they are changing their form. That you're changing it from olives to oil or grapes to wine. When Rabbi Shaya traveled from Nardor. Also, he remembered this Mishnah and he delivered that Mishnah when he came. If someone took olives and grapes and started squeezing them before Shabbos, and they were continuing to give out liquid on Shabbos, are you allowed to use that liquid on Shabbos or not? Or are you allowed to even make it happen? If you're allowed to start the work before Shabbos. In this case, he already did it. He chopped olives or grapes before the Shabbos, and juice oozed by themselves on the Shabbos. Asurin, they are forbidden for consumption on the Shabbos. Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Shimon matirim, but on Rabbi Lozer, Rabbi Shimon says you're allowed to drink that juice that comes out of the olives, or use the oil that came, juice that came out of grapes, and oil that came out of olives. So Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina brisa l'shmial, and Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina was not aware of this brisa. Rabbi Lozer, maitam lomar Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina. Why did Rabbi Lozer did not follow the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina? Amar lo chlavit mar lo. Has not the following has not been said regarding the Mishnah containing Rabbi Shmuel's view. Where they lack pounding, meaning you still have to pound them to get the juice out of them. no one disagrees that it is forbidden. When the Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva argue whether you're allowed to use this beverage, liquid, that came out of the olives or the grapes, where the fruits are pounded but lack mashing. I guess the process of squeezing it or grinding it, you have the pounding and you have also the mashing. Just two different stages. So if it's lacking pounding, everyone agrees that it's prohibited. Everyone in the same view, everyone agreeing that it should not be done, and you should not benefit from the liquid that comes out of it on Shabbos. When do they disagree? When it's just missing, lacking mashing. And these olives and grapes in our Mishnah too are like those that lack pounding. Rabbi Yosef ruled on an actual case in accordance with the view of Rabbi Shmuel. Following the discussion regarding allowing the olive press to continue its work on the Shabbos, the Gemara records another ruling concerning the oil of the olive press on the Shabbos. Shemen shel badodin u'machzor shel badodin, the oil of the olive pressers and the mats of the olive pressers. Rav also Shmuel Shori. Rav prohibits moving them on Shabbos, these mats or this the oil, but Shmuel permits moving it on Shabbos. 19b3, a related dispute between Rav and Shmuel. Hani karki dezuze, these paired mats used for covering ship's cargo. Rav also u'Shmuel Shori. Rav forbids moving those mats on the Shabbos, where Shmuel permits moving them on Shabbos. Amar Rav Nachman said, Eiz lach halovo, a goat kept for its milk, v'rochel egizos, and sheep kept for its wool, v'tarnegos avitzoso, and a hen kept for its eggs, v'seire dirdayo, and plow oxen, v'samri deiska, and dates intended for purposes of commerce, meaning you dealing with dates and you keeping them for business, for selling. Rav also Shmuel Omamut, Rav forbids moving or partaking of them on Yom Tov, whereas Shmuel says that it is permitted to move or partake of them, either to move them or take them. And they, Rav and Shmuel, argue in the matter of dispute between Rav Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. There was a certain rabbinical student who ruled on an actual case in Charto de Argis, which is Charto de Argis was the name of the person who built the city of Charto. Therefore, it was called Charto de Argis. It doesn't say where exactly the city was, but as the name of the person who built that city, his name was Charto. Shamti Rav Amnun, in accordance with the view of Rabbi Shimon, who is lenient in the matters of muktzah, that you're allowed to move those mats or the oil. Shamti Rav Amnuna excommunicated the student. Why? But we hold in accordance with the view of Rabbi Shimon. Nowadays, the halacha follows his ruling in this matter. So why then did Rav Amnuna punish the students ruling accordingly? So just because he was lenient, he had a support to his leniency from Rabbi Shimon. So why was he punished? Why was he excommunicated? Be'asr de Rav Hava, it was in Rav's locale that this incident took place. Meaning Charto de Argis was within the area that was under Rav's jurisdiction. So the student who ruled contrary to Rav should not have done so. The Gemara cites another incident about rabbinical students who acted on their own in matters disputed by the Gemara says another incident about rabbinical students. Hane trei talmidei. So these two rabbinical students were at the house that caught fire on Shabbos. They were in a house that caught fire on Shabbos. Chad motzid b'chad mona v'chad matzid b'arba v'chamesh mona. One salvaged only the food and drink that was in one container, and the other student salvaged, meaning saved, even what was in 4 and 5 containers. So he was able to take with him to save from the fire 4 or 5 containers. And they were disagreeing in the matter of the dispute between Rava bar Zavda and Ravuna. It says in 28, if a house catches fire on Shabbos, technically one should be permitted to move all its non-muktzeh contents to safety within the area in which it is permitted to carry. Maybe in the same courtyard, for example, in the same or contiguous courtyard whose occupants have joined in an eruv, have a boundary together, they're sharing a wall or string. Rabbis, however, limited the amount one may salvage from the house on the Shabbos for fear that allowing one to salvage unreservedly, meaning he can take as much as you want. They had a fear that Rabbi said if you're going to take him as much as you want, it might lead him to extinguish the fire. They say, you know what? Instead of us schlepping this whole thing outside, then you'll be taking the entire house. You'll be taking the entire house out of your. I mean, David asking a question about the tefillin. Are you allowed to take out your tefillin to save them from the fire?
It's muktzeh.
Yeah. So according to like I said, the Gemara is not the book of halacha, but in general, like a sefer Torah, tefillin, anything that has to do with kedusha. When you can say it's a muktzeh to put them on, maybe it would not be to save them from fire because of the desecration of Hashem's name. Might have a permit to save them from the fire. But the point over here is that there's even when it comes to non-muktzah, there is a limit of how much you can take,
right, because
of the concern that you might put out the fire. It's also I don't want to go into halacha, but in general, if you can pour water not directly on the fire,
right,
but what the fire ultimately is going to come to, maybe let's say fire is in one room and you spraying the walls of another room, so when the fire reaches that area it will be put out by itself because it's already wet. You just wetted the walls, you didn't directly put out the fire. So there's different ways of dealing with it.
yeah.
But the point is that over here the student, one took more, one took less. If there's a whole long discussion on it, if you guys want to read it, it's on the bottom of 19b43 in note 28. Anyway, the Mishnah, we're starting a new Mishnah. Ein tzoilin baso batzur uveitze. Not allowed to roast. We may not roast meat, onions, or eggs on Friday. Ela kidei shitzolim b'yom, unless there is sufficient time for them to become roasted while it is still day. So just to make it more vivid, if you would assuming that it takes 10 minutes to cook an egg, and Shabbos starts at 7 o'clock. Shabbos is at 7, and you would be putting the egg on the fire at 6:57, 6:58, 6:59. Is it okay? It's going to cook on Shabbos, but you placed it on the fire before Shabbos. It wasn't Shabbos 6:58. So it says, we may not roast meat, onions, or eggs on Friday, unless there is sufficient time for them to become roasted while it's still day, while it is yet day. Obviously, the Gemara will go into the details of it, but the Mishnah just tells us the gist of it. We may not place a bread in the oven, again close to nightfall. In 19b4, it says you're not allowed to put a biscuit upon coals. No biscuit upon coals, unless there is sufficient of time. Unless there is sufficient time for its surface to crust while it is still day. And for Pinchas' question about the cholent, what do we do with the cholent? That we put it on the fire. So there are two. How do we put cholent on the fire on a crock pot before Shabbos, and it cooks into Shabbos? Yes. So there's two opinions. One says it has to be ma'achal ben dosai, that it has to be at least maybe a third of it has to be cooked. Ben dosai was a thief that he used to eat on the run, so he ate things that were not cooked. So the rabbi used him as a measure of food, how much cooked it needs to be for you to allow it to cook on Shabbos. But in general, we try to make sure that at least 50% of it is cooked before Shabbos. So yeah, it would be a problem to actually put a cholent in the mixture. Cholent really means a mixture. You put all the potatoes, the beans, and the barley, meat, all the things that you put in the cholent right before Shabbos. It would be a problem. And then it's like cooking completely on Shabbos. But it needs to be at least 50% cooked before Shabbos. Certain opinions are saying that even less, but this mixture has to be done before Shabbos. So, unless there is sufficient time for its surface to crust, that's speaking about these biscuits. Put a biscuit upon coils, you need to allow it to for its surface at least to be crusty before Shabbos while it's still day. Rabbi Lezer says the bread, usually the bottom part, is more crusty, and it's the first one to become crusty because it's sitting on something, so the bottom gets most of the heat. So there must be sufficient time for its bottom surface to crust while it is yet day. We may lower the Pesach offering into an oven close to nightfall and allow it to roast on the Shabbos. Obviously, we're going to see in the Gemara why, when it comes to the Pesach offering, we're allowed to do it close to nightfall. To roast it close to nightfall. And similarly, we may ignite the pyre of the temple fire chamber on Friday close to nightfall. When it comes to the fire on the altar, it also may be in the fire chamber on Friday close to nightfall. Uvigvulin, when it comes to outside the temple in 20a1, outside the temple, against we need the fire to catch in the majority of it. The majority of the wood should be catching fire, should be on fire. A pyre may be lit before the Shabbos only if there is sufficient time for the fire to catch onto most of it while it is yet day. Rabbi Yehuda says when it comes to fire, in the case of a fire fueled by charcoals, it is permitted to light it before the Shabbos as long as the charcoals ignite even slightly. You don't have to wait for, like the previous opinion, that the fire catch onto most of it. Even a little bit of it would be fine, according to Rabbi Yehuda. So we'll continue, God willing, this discussion tomorrow. Thank you everyone for watching. We're going to have another short segment on the halacha on Pesach. Bruchim to you.